really appreciate everyone hanging in for the keynote sessions. We're going to head to our first panel. I'd like to invite Arjomandi, Katherine here, as well as Ruth Rassool up to the stage to sit here on the first panel. Riza is going to be moderating the panel, asking a few questions of our esteemed panelists here.
So microphone 101, the sensor is right at the bottom of the microphone. It doesn't work when you wave it around. You're actually talking right down to the bottom of the cylinder, like that. And so you don't have to talk very loudly in order for audio to come through. So this is an example of mansplaining. And I've got an audience and I'm standing up, so I'm in my power position, but I'm going to step away. I'm going to step away to just anticipating the onslaught. I asked my favorite AI, which that changes every week as a new AI is coming out. I asked for some questions, because I'm a moderator of this panel, and I asked, can you create me some questions that would provoke a conversation around personal AI? And you know what? It came up with a dozen questions that were really vanilla and antiseptic, and I threw them out. And I thought we just have a conversation from the perspective of people that have got some seniority, that have seen the evolution of the computer science. Thank you. Okay. that have seen the evolution of the computer industry, and I'm seeing it as a pendulum swinging. When Dr. Searles was talking before, he talked previously on previous calls about AI being in its mainframe phase. Mainframe where computing is very centralized. He said if you think back to the 1970s, computing was a mainframe phenomenon. It was a mainframe prospect where if you had a job to run, you'd run it on a batch processing, on a time-shared computing service like your payroll, and it would come back. And then along came the personal computer. And if you'd ask people in the 70s, hey, do you want a personal computer? That would be like saying, do you want a personal nuclear reactor? It was just inconceivable until it happened. And then within less than a decade, we had computers on everyone's desk, and there was an explosion of innovation. I'm seeing the pendulum swing, and I wonder if you have a perspective on where we are in the swinging of that pendulum from mainframe to personal, back to mainframe, and where are we in the AI context? So let's take it from Katherine. You've just spoken. And do you see us moving to more centralization, or do you see us moving to more distributed AI?
That's a really good question. I feel like those are, I don't know that it is a pendulum. I feel like they coexist and are in constant, like a tumbling, brawling. I wouldn't say it's a fight, but it's a dynamic, cyclical relationship but it's a constant motion, right? It's not, to me, it's not that sort of linear representation of a single point along a spectrum. To me, it's a constant rotation, a constant coexisting, or maybe we're in a tornado of AI? I don't know, because I don't think it's so cut and dry as to say that we're on a single point on a linear scale between the two.
Okay, thanks. Faye, what are your thoughts on where we are?
Yes, tend to agree. So I think you have to look at the computing evolution itself. it was mainframe, then it became client-server architecture,
Right.
then it was VMware virtualization, then it was compute. Let's build a data center where the compute is, because these devices were dumb and didn't have enough compute. Now we're reaching a level that every device has compute, right? The computational capability is going up from CPU to GPU to memory to microcontrollers. Everything has compute. So with that in place, obviously, you have to say, okay, my software construct will need to change, because I don't need to host software in cloud anymore. I can actually host the workload on where the compute is. At the same time, we have to look at how the traffic patterns have changed. If you look at the first generation mobile internet and browser, was about, I'm gonna go where the content is and consume the content. I'm gonna go watch a video, I'm gonna go consume information. But now these devices generate traffic, they generate information. You're just capturing video to broadcast it. You're gonna take a picture and share it with somebody else. So the data source and traffic pattern has changed to device generating information. And now I have enough compute, why shouldn't I be able to process that data right there and extract knowledge right there? So it's not about a pendulum of movement from back and forth, it's about the evolution of compute, connectivity, and information. Therefore, it's moving to the hybrid.
Right.
And again, it's about hybrid versus one over the other. I'm not a big believer of full decentralization. I'm not a big believer of anarchy. I'm a big believer of a small government, autonomy, but you have some global, again, framework of policy, regulations, and things like that everybody need to abide by. Otherwise, we're going to have a chaotic world.
Okay, Ruth, W.B. Yeats.
Yes, the centre cannot hold, things fall apart.
Right.
But I think what you're thinking of in terms of a pendulum, maybe the pendulum is the public acceptance of the personalization or the invasion of the compute power. I'm thinking of it in terms of in education, whether we accept the personal capability. Outside we were talking about having spoken with Nolan about education and AI. That maybe a pendulum is the right metaphor, I'm not sure, but we're at the point where we're having to teach students with that AI capability, just in the same way as we, back in the mainframe days, just as we had to teach them how to use the internet, just as, I was talking to a librarian outside, just as we had to teach them library science and research. So probably it's more of a maelstrom, that this thing is, we're in the center of it, and what does fluctuate is the acceptance of it.
There we go. Okay. So we've had the gain turned up on all of our microphones now, just to accommodate.
We need AI to
We do
just
need
adjust
AI.
it dynamically.
AI should be listening. Now I'm going to hold the microphone further away. Okay, so you touched on a point, and a lot of the conversation you've had today. When in fact, when we were speaking with Nolan, you were talking about AI in education, and AI. You've got some experience of trying to introduce AI into your classroom. Perhaps you can talk a bit about that and describe that to everybody.
Yeah, and that's again a conversation that we were expanding outside. That if you create, like Kwaai created an assistant for me that is trained on my course content. So that's a useful product for my students who are not, when we were all in college, except you maybe, it was the older generation. When we were in college, it was a 9-to-5 full-time thing. The students that I have now in online classes have full-time jobs, full-time family commitments, and they're full-time students. And they have to pack that all into a 24-hour period. So they need access to course content at 2 a.m. They need to be able to ask questions at 2 a.m. If there is an assistant that is trained on accurate data, such as what is the first paper about? What do I need to study for the first exam? If you ask ChatGPT that, it won't know. It will give you an answer, but it will be garbage. So we need to have that more personalized, accurate information.
I want to ask a question.
Yeah, come on.
Actually, around this notion of personalized AI, has anybody seen Subservient on Netflix? No?
It's on my list.
Yeah.
It's on your list. Yeah, I'm sorry for those, I mean, I don't want to spill the beans, but it's one of the, I'm a movie buff and documentary buff. These are the two things I love. Subservient is a movie about a personalized robot. That when you buy it, it's so focused on you to do what you wish to do. To the point that at some point it wants to kill your baby. And it calls it the little problem. So the question is, what do we mean by personalized AI? To what degree this personalized AI know about me? And do I really want that level of personalization, that it knows deepest, darkest point of my mind that even I don't want to look at, or I don't want to know? So what does personalized AI really means?
Okay.
I think it's, I mean, what we really need is that we set our own boundaries, right? That those boundaries are individual. Right? So we can, the way I see it is I want AI tools that will do everything I need them to do, but absolutely nothing that I don't need and don't want. And I think that's the struggle. The struggle is that we get easily trapped into using the tools that somebody else thinks that we need, right? And then it has the functionality and shares what it wants versus what I want.
The problem is that majority of time we don't even know what we want.
Well,
We don't know what we don't know.
We'll have to ask a chat.
And then the moment it comes, you don't know whether, oh shoot, I don't want this.
I like to think the boundaries, I think that's a little bit easier. It's kind of like, rather than defining a list of feature requests or what it is that are desires, I think setting boundaries and allowing the marketplace or developers or whoever's working on tools to suggest function, to suggest that I might want a tool to do X, Y, and Z. But I think my ability to say, okay, but up to this point and in this way, and that's where the freedom and the kind of personal agency comes from, I think, is the ability to set boundaries. Not so much to set requests.
But do you consider personalized AI and boundaries as one thing or a collection of, based on at any moment on what I want?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, we are humans, and what we want does change from moment to moment. So
Exactly. So it boils down, to systems that are flexible enough and interoperable.
Flexible.
And
All
you
the way
can
top
wipe
down.
out whichever linkage that you don't want to have.
We don't just need to define what personalized is, but we need to define benefit and usefulness, and that's how we make those decisions about what's beneficial to us or what is intrusive.
Exactly, and what's beneficial to us could change and could be starting with simple things. I use map wherever I go. But the moment I'm about a mile away from my home, I stop the map because I know the rest of the way.
You don't need the map to tell you the 5 turns to get out of your driveway.
But the map never learns that from me. And it wants to continue working until I manually turn it off. Every time it gives me a suggestion for a path, I take a different route. And it doesn't learn from me. They say, okay, next time is Faye. I already know she entered the car, it's her phone, it's connected to my Bluetooth system. Let me take the route that she wants. So it can start from much more basic, functional, practical way than jumping into know everything about me. And I think if we start with those meaningful, pragmatic steps in a proper software construct and structure, then the personalization could become the outcome, versus personalization be the first one to start with.
What do you think about it, Catherine?
I think in terms of the same, so we all approach this from our own unique perspective and set of experiences, right? So when I think about this question of what does it mean, right? What does personal AI mean? I think of it in terms of things like trust and safety and things like that. It's about comfort level.
Yes.
And so I think of it in terms of guardrails, right? You think of it in the same way that you talk about putting guardrails into applications to guard against unsafe responses and the prompt injection, whatever it is that we're trying to guard our applications from. I think of applications that respect me as a human in the same way. So setting up my individual guardrails.
We've been debating this within Kwaai for the last 2 years, year and a half, to come up with what is a definition. And you heard Doc Searles talk what's the difference between personalized and personal AI, or personnel AI, which a lot of vendors are actually creating. 3 things. One is focus on individuals' problems rather than the enterprise problems. That's a focus, that's a choice. The second is it's an architectural choice of moving systems from centralized control and devolving the control and allowing ourselves to know ourselves a lot better. And the third is alignment. I think it's what you're talking about of trying to make sure that the motivations of the technology are aligned with our values. And it's an agent for us, a loyal agent, not a double agent working on behalf of corporations. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, being that I do work for a corporation, I would love to envision a world where the interests of the individual coexist with the interests of the enterprise, right? We have some similar struggles, and I think we can solve problems in a way that meets all of our needs as individuals as well as the enterprise needs. And again, I preach the gospel of open source unnecessarily because of where we are, but as individuals in communities like this, where we are right now, this is how we influence the enterprise. This is how we influence others to create the things that we want by setting up, by influencing projects, by showing up, right? Showing up at working groups, influencing projects, but also influencing the direction of the industry. We have the ability to influence where this is all going and make certain demands and come up with solutions that enterprises then adopt and we reap the benefits of. That's kind of, that's my hope.
So in a final question, there are a number of organizations like Kwaai that targeted the year 2030. So there are organizations in climate, there's the UN 2030 initiative, they target 2030 as a key date. I was drafting a blog post at the beginning of this year saying 2030 is 5 years too late. Can you think of what do you anticipate our industry would look like 5 years from now, in 2030? What is your crystal ball gazing? What would our society be like? how to be using this technology,
I think we're exactly at that junction of a dystopian future or utopian future. You know, and I think the issue is bigger than, I mean, I want to touch on corporate, enterprise versus personal.
Okay.
Are you a corporate or a person? At any moment your role changes.
Yes.
Kwaai as an open source organization, Reza as a founder of Kwaai open source organization, Reza as a person, Reza as maybe working for an enterprise. At any moment your role may change, and at any moment some of your expertise may be used for a different purpose. So remember, the bring your own device is almost like bring your own expertise. So your agents need to be able to work within that construct as well, because it's an monopolization, I agree. And the dystopian direction will be when it's about monopolization. Utopian is when we each and every agent can participate in that economy. So I think that's the difference, whether we're going to end up in monopolized world, and tech monopolization is very dangerous, or whether we're going to all have a role for participation. Now, if tech become monopolized, and if everything runs by AI and robotics, what is our role? Which means that we have no role. So at some point the AI may realize that we have no role, so let's kill them all.
Okay, let's be a little bit hopeful.
So therefore we have no choice than following the utopian model. That's my point, because if we can't participate in the economy, if we have no role, who is the user to buy these solutions?
Okay, well, Ruth, let's wrap up.
Well, I'm thinking that your industry is not my industry. My industry is education, and so the hope lies in the education of the people that will become part of your industry. And there's some exciting things going on with AI in education. Some of it is dystopian, but I think that's where we can influence what will happen for your industry in 5 years' time. It's happening.
On the education, I think we have to teach people common sense,
Yes.
and we have to make sure our AIs have common sense built into them.
So
That's what we're suffering from as society.
Very good. Okay. But we're going to call it there. I know people reaching to ask questions to the panelists. Okay. Great. Okay. Very good. Thank you so much. I'd like to thank Professor Ruth Rassool. I'd like to thank Arjomandi and Katherine, two of our recent sponsors. Thanks so much. So Katherine from Intel, Arjomandi from both of the companies. Mimic's going to become theirs fairly soon.
By the way, we're going to be at NVIDIA GTC event, so if anybody's going to AI event there, look us up. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. There will be an opportunity to ask comments